You're listening to the Out of the Box podcast with Timmy, Halisa, and Sinosure.
Hello, welcome to Out of the Box, and today is an interesting episode. We're bringing to you Basiru Diomaye Faye. Okay, if I'm butchering the name, right, just forgive that. But yeah, with excitement, I'm not even going to introduce us because we're already well known. But we have special guests today who like to talk about Senegal. Who like to talk about the new president of Senegal and the lessons that we can learn as Nigerians. So yes, let's just hand over to our guests. But we do have special guests today. Dorothy, can you usher in our guests?
Okay, yeah. So I think we have three fantastic guests today. Very bright minds. I can do a lot of hyping, but this is beyond the hype. So these are very bright people. We have a mayor with us. Yeah, and we also have Mr. Sahid, and we also have beautiful flower with us. Yeah, so what as Halisa said, we are going to be discussing around Senegal and the future, the recent occurrences in Senegal, and then what it holds for us, as young people. What lessons are there to be learned? I've had a lot of people like sending me messages. Oh, do you see what happened in Senegal? And surprisingly, from like all sides of the political spectrum, like not just some of us who are diehard youths advocates for youths to be leaders in Nigeria and everything. So I've had people from all across the spectrum, and that's been a surprising thing. Like, what's even people that have said no to young people in political office before, say, what's up? See what happened in Senegal, so we should talk about it. And I said, what, let's we have to make this the topic of the conversation and this episode of the podcast today. So yeah, let's hear from our guest. Amen, how you doing? And after that, we check in with Mr. Sahid.
Thank you, Dorothy. It's an honor to do this with you, and I'm very excited speaking on this topic that has pervaded the information space in recent times. It's great to see Africa rising, and I hope to contribute my bit.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Sahid, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon. Really honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sino Show, let's check in with you. What's good? You've been quiet.
Expectedly, we have visitors in the house. I guess that's my own way of saying, oh, welcome, gentlemen. And it's a pleasure also to be doing this once again with us. So, that's the bit I have for
Okay.
the moment.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So, just a little bit about this new president. So, his name, which I have mentioned before, but I want to try one more time to make sure I am very correct because it's important. Basiru Diomaye Faye. He's 44 years old. And according to ideology, I hear or we have information that he is a left-leaning Pan-Africanist. So I just feel like it's something that we might need to also stand on since we have said he's also a youth, yeah, there are different ideology, but that is also one that I would like for us to also, speak to during the conversation. So apparently he's like the youngest president and everything went smoothly. He is the person that there's a, should I call it a tag to him, which they call prison to presidency. So he was in prison and he's like a major opposition party. So yes, there's a lot we could say about him. So I just wanted to bring that very short intro to him before we go into the conversation fully. So I hear that we said that everyone is excited along all political lines. So let's just hear what you think about this president or what this means actually, because I think maybe some people might be blowing it a whole lot out of proportion, or are we having the proportionate response? I got that term from all of the bizarre things that are going on in the world. But anyways, are we having a proportionate response to whatever is going on right now in Senegal? Does this mean anything for Africa? So what's just your initial thoughts to it? And what do you think about how people are responding to this, especially Nigerians too? Dorothy, should we usher in our guest first? In fact,
Yes,
Dorothy, chill.
so
Mr.
it's
Sahid,
yeah, okay.
let's
I would have
yeah,
loved to
let's
hear
hear
from
from.
the guest first, because
Yes,
my
yes,
opinion
Mr.
is
Sahid, please, can you go
welcome.
first?
Well, thank you so much. Well, Senegal, congratulations. But I think is we shouldn't. Yeah, we should celebrate that young people are taking over. But I think from a bigger picture, if you look at it, look at what happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Though that was more of a military takeover, but if you see the caliber of people that took over, they seem to be pan Africanist, right? They're pushing the African agenda. Now, Senegal coming in through the ballot, it's it's a it seems to be pushing the same trend more through the ballot, right? Which is quite interesting, right? And the young president that came in Senegal, they did not get it easy. It wasn't. It wasn't something that happened in 6 months. I think they've been advocating. They've been doing a lot of protest over 5 years, trying to get the people of Senegal to vote differently. And the incumbent president, actually wanted to do some anky panky in order to defer the election, most likely in favor of them and France. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I think it was very obvious that if anything changed, the country could explode, right? And that's why they said the voice of the people is the voice of God, right? Everybody wanted an election, and they wanted to vote in the direction of this young breed of politicians in Senegal, which is great. Now, an election is coming up right around the corner. South Africa election is coming, I believe, end of May. The outcome of that election, if it shows the same trend, then countries like Nigeria, like Ghana, like Kenya, and all the it's gonna it's gonna seem to be a trend. Hopefully, that would continue through the years, that we vote in a different direction. And I like the title of this space, out of the box, out of the box, right? Africans need to start thinking outside the box so that we get a different result from what we're so used to. However, I need to really emphasize this. Being young does not translate to good leadership, right? We have young people that have been, yeah, we just had a minister in Nigeria, very young. We heard what she did, right? So it's not a matter of young is good, don't get me wrong, but it's not a factor of awesome leadership. I yield the mic.
Thank you very much. Yes. Can we have Amir? Amir, what's your take on this?
All right, thank you very much. Like I said in my introduction, I believe that this is a topic that is very critical to political consciousness in Africa. And I want to congratulate Mr. Fai for his exploits in winning the presidential election in Senegal. He ran what I will call a very energetic campaign. It was premised on what the French will call changement, which is change in English. And what he did was he reached out to the populace to speak about the fact of course, in alliance with the man who has been named the prime minister, Mr. Sanko, that things would not longer be the same. And if you see the wave in those sort of rhetoric around the sub-Saharan Africa, then you would understand that it is just keen to what has been or what is a rejection of the old order by peoples in certain countries. Some has resulted in unfortunate military coups, while this it's more noteworthy because it was a democratic handover. I think Mr. Said echoed some of my thoughts in his submission when he said it's a good development, but I would rather have a cautionary approach to this, considering that we've had several African leaders in the past that have been young persons that unfortunately have not lived up to the expectations in their office. It may interest us to know that there's arguably one of the youngest African rulers was Valentine Strasser, who was the former head of state of Sierra Leone, and he is arguably one of Africa's youngest leaders post colonization era. And he came into power at 25 years old, overthrowing the government of Joseph Said Momo in 1992. So he was just about 25 years old. Unfortunately, after 4 years in power, he fell into the trap, which is sometimes occurs with African leaders, of being living an ostentatious lifestyle, eroding public trust, and while still holding grip to power, decided to contest the elections. He was eventually ousted. Another African leader was Mikel Mikombro, who was the first president of Burundi, 23 years old. Two coups, ascended the presidency in December 1966, established a one party system, and extended his temporary constitution. Of course, he was also ousted in a counter coup. And the one that probably more recent will be Samuel Doe in Liberia, took over seized power at 28 years old through a bloody coup in 1980. But today, his name is associated with one of the worst humanitarian crises and in Africa, which is the war in Liberia, and that Nigeria also helped to quell, and that led to his undignified demise. So there are a couple of people that have reached the echelon in terms of having the right to rule. I'm using that word carefully because some of these people have ascended power through military coups, and those who have been given the constitutional right to rule as well. It's left to be seen, but so far, what I would want to take away from this event is that there is a wind of change blowing through the continent, and I'm very glad that the people of Senegal have decided that this is the right time to move forward in a dignified way, of course, through the ballot box. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the knowledge shared. Let's take Show's perspective, and then we'll go around the room too, and do it to me. Sign a show.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, and thank you for the speakers for their contribution so far. My position is somewhat similar to what I've heard, and then, but I think I'll caption it in a way to make it very, very straight to the point. It's a welcome development to see democratic transition at any point in time, and I say this because I am a big um, advocate of democracy. Because I believe at the end of the day, voice populi, voice Dei. Also, I think it's also applaudable that a person could emerge at such age, having no history of opulence or perhaps background of wealth like you would ordinarily see it with so the people who emerged in other democracies. Also, with just less than 2 months to prepare for that election in a real sense, and then, of course, a leftist who did not have to use the military power to emerge in Africa. But generally and succinctly put, I think also to mention, or let me say reiterate, like Mr. Said has said, Amir have also mentioned, that youthfulness is not an ideology. What we are testing now is maybe this leftist, like it is generally acclaimed to be, would indeed help us get things right. You will think, what an oxymoron, right? Because at the end of the day, we've gone right, 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 and what it seems like the African people get for mid and right is all the time mid performances. So why not just try left? Maybe that's actually the right that we should have gone to all along. Like I said, youthfulness is not an ideology, and what has happened is a welcome development. Albeit, even if he's left, or is whether he's left or right, at the end of the day, my judgment of him will be based on how he makes the life of Senegalese people better. How much of gains he is able to post with regards to breaking, they have a francophone country that land from the shackles, which is the French imperialism that has been operating, not even in disguise, over there over the years. And it also goes without saying that Senegal is one of the countries that I've never had that where I have never had anything of such like military coup taking place, and it also further emphasizes how much in democratic value that might be the case in Senegal, hopefully. But what I also would like to insist and re-emphasize is we also hope that this is not just a civilian rule, because, like we have said in some other conversations that we had, there's a far difference. There's a proper demarcation, or let me say, a thick line
Yeah,
between
yeah. Well,
civilian
as they
rule.
would always say, that change is brought about by the energy of the youth and the wisdom of the old people. So I guess every demographic has a role. See, don't I don't I, I know it is. I can't just reference the person. I forgot the name. However, I'm just trying to say that everybody has a role to play. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, there's no particular person that should not. But I definitely get your point, because the question I asked that brought about all of these initial thoughts is, do you think people are responding the right way, or what's your own, perception, or what's your own take about how people are responding? And I think everybody has done justice. Like, yes, there are people, many people that are excited, but Nigerians, we tend to make ourselves the other, even in the conditions of our own country. We're like, we'll be talking about interest. Politics is about interest. And you hear, when you pay attention and listen to how people are talking, they are not in that equation. They're outside of it. So every time, it seems like a lot of Nigerians are very comfortable being the other, being outside of everything that's going on. And I saw that also happen here. Of course, we are, in this case, we are definitely the other. But when we talk about, the general pan-Africanist, perspective, will be like, oh, this is a black issue. This is like an African issue. But trust Nigerians to stay outside of it, celebrate with Senegalese people, and be like, oh yeah, you fought for your, democracy. I even watched when a minister was on Al Jazeera when they were trying to move the election forward, and the whole world was kind of concerned. And that's why sometimes I'm quite wary, when the whole world is participating. Sometimes everybody is saying, oh, Senegal, why are you trying to do this? Are you trying to ruin democracy? And everything is so calm that I'm looking at it like, okay, this is not really revolutionary. But like you said, we should, it seems like we're putting such big what do you call it, this, we're looking at it, everybody's like so zoned in. If it was like a 70 years old man that was elected in Senegal, nobody is going to be asking for what the person wants to do for the people, right? But now that is like a younger person, then it's like everybody wants to
Tim,
everybody.
I understand where you're coming from, trying to advocate for a generational shift in leadership across Africa. Totally agree, right? Being young has more advantage than being older, right? Um, and I I want to kind of tilt towards Shani Shaw's belief that hey, the new government, yeah, young guy is just coming in. Yeah, let's look at him in the first. Let's see him after 100 days. Let's evaluate him after 100 days. Yes, it's good to celebrate. Yeah, election, people are meant to win, people are meant to lose. Those that win will celebrate, just like a football match. Yeah, winners will celebrate. Yeah, great, great, great. Let the work begin. 100 days after, let's see what he has done. Good plus to him that he had his cabinet ready to roll and they've started working, right? So, but you see in Nigeria and look at Senegal. Senegal, comparing Senegal and Nigeria, I think um, Nigeria should be leading the way. However, we've lost it in our history over and over again to do the right thing, right? Remember June 12 election? The people got it right then, but the power players twisted it, right? Only God knows where Nigeria would have been now if we trended the path of June 12th, right? But the people of Nigeria, now I'm talking to the electorate, they need to now start thinking. I was watching an interview of what. Okay, Amir, welcome back. I'm going to let me just wrap it up here. So
Yeah, please
there
go
was
ahead.
yeah, there was an interview with one of these quote and unquote elderly politicians that the young journalist was asking, "Oh, Nigerians are suffering now. Tinubu is there. Everybody's complaining." He said, "No, they shouldn't complain. That they voted for him, right? He won the election." Yeah, and the young lady was now saying, "But people are dying right now." He said they should continue to die. He said they should continue to die. They voted for him. That he is now expecting in the next election that when people come to campaign, they bring money, they bring Indomie noodles. He wants to see then if the electorate will continue to collect money, collect Indomie noodle, and still vote for people because they have money, right? That's he's waiting for that time that if the electorate is going to start thinking outside the box, that hey, wait a minute, for the last 27 almost 24 years plus of democracy in Nigeria, we've been doing this. People bring money, we take their money, we vote for them, and we're not getting change. Is it not time that we start thinking outside the box? Because that's what happened in Senegal. Obviously, the people of Senegal said, hey, enough is enough. We are all going to vote in a different direction. And that's what's liberating them today. I use the mic, Amil.
Okay,
Yes.
so
So Amir, let's.
yeah, yeah, Saeed, thank you so much. I was saying that I don't want to subscribe to Duratimus notion, which is that there's no evident excitement that Mr. Faye has become the democratic president of the Republic, the Senegal. I'm saying this because if you look at the data and historical antecedents, young people have come in with a lot of fanfare. And like I stated in my previous submission, this marks a new time for the continent because there is arguably that wave of change. Unfortunately, it has resulted in military coup, but this is a democratic transition, which makes me very excited. What I am expressing is what I would say some cautious optimism to see how he can build on this euphoria around his ascendance to power into taking Senegal to the next level, or let's use the cliche term, delivering democratic dividends to the people of Senegal, considering that he ran on a notion called changement, which is change. Now, in speaking to the data, I would like to draw Timmy's attention to a couple of things, and this will just take a bit of time. Now, I had to look at a number of presidents or rulers, and again, because some of these people came in through unconstitutional means. But let's just, for the sake of this argument, take it that these are people who had the best intentions when they took over power. Let's give them the benefit of doubt. Just a couple of few people, especially just those who have even died in office. Omar Bongo, Gabon, or left office, died or left office. Pardon me. Omar Bongo, Gabon. He assumed office at the age of 32, and he spent 41 years in power before he left at 73. Jose Eduardo dos Santos, which is Angola, he assumed office at 37, spent 38 years in power, and died at 75. Gasseme Iyademe, Togo, close to us here, 31 was when he assumed office. He spent 38 years in power and left office at 69. I could go on and on, but because we have such a limited time, I'll pinpoint this at various points during the discussion. The summary of this is we I personally would applaud the ascendancy of Mr. Faye. I think it's a good thing for the continent. I think the continent needs young rulers are who are going to beat this bureaucracy that's held us back, who are very relatable to the ordinary citizens. Again, a Nigerian cliche, but at the same time, we want them to ride on on that euphoria towards delivering the democratic dividends, and not basking in some sugar candy mountain that, okay, because I'm a young person, governance is going to be less kind to me. Thank you.
Great point. The way you expressed your optimism, I think that's also a fair point. I want to just ask one question, and my question is, I don't know if you've come across this or if you've heard it, but I think it's a popular narrative at this point. But there is this narrative that Africans are not ready for democracy, or democracy is not what is going to work for Africa. So, do you think that this shift is something that would upset that narrative? Do you think it's something that would show people that, oh yes, let's start revising the way we see this democracy and Africa relationship?
Of course. Okay, that's
Great,
Said.
great
Okay, Said, go
question.
ahead.
Great
Then I'll
question.
chip in.
Yeah. That is a excellent question. Is there democracy right for Africa? Is Africa right for democracy? Excellent question. And I think in previous during the um, election campaigns, we even brought it up that look, is this democracy even right for us? Because you see the Dubai's, the Middle East, they are not running a democracy, and their people are happy for it, right? I think irrespective of the system of government that is running, if the people of the country are benefiting from it, it's really, yeah, freedom of speech, right to move around, all those things are great, but the most important thing is the people needs to feel the benefit of the system of government that is playing, right? And unfortunately, Amir just mentioned a few leaders that came in young and they left there very old. They left there as dictators, right? The beginning is always really great, but the end turns different. So I think a system of government that mitigates the abuse of power, that would mitigate holding, they said absolute power corrupts absolutely, that mitigates that ideology that once they get to power, they misuse it. That a system of government that will curtail that would be more beneficial for not just Nigeria, not just Senegal, but every other African country. Because we've seen the trend that they come in young and they want to stay there forever. In fact, the sad thing is they even hand over to their children. Their children will take over and continue where the father stops, right? So, but in the case of Senegal, the question to ask this Faye, the new president, is, hey, how long are you going to be there? Are you going to be there forever? What's your transition plan in the next? I understand they run is it one term, 7 years, or is it? I don't know the system of government. I think it's one term, 7 years. What's your plan in the next 7 years? The question should be asked now, so that the people of Senegal starts to mitigate that uh, uh, that system of they want to stay there forever, because Faye is happy now, he's the president now. Let's say we don't know the Faye we are going to see in the next 5 years. Maybe it's the Faye that wants to rule forever. Amiro, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. I think. Yeah. But yeah. So I think it's a very important question, and like what was asked again, like this question of democracy. Yeah. Nobody knows what the future holds, but I say this all the time, is that, like what I said before, we are asking all these questions because it's a young person. So if it was an older guy, we will not even be talking about a lot of things, but a lot of questions have been asked because it's a young person and everything. But I understand it. But what I'm saying is, when we comes to that question which Halisa asked about democracy and everything, I have carefully, because I think in Nigeria, over the last 1 year, there was a lot. In fact, I'm sure I don't know about you guys, but at one particular point, when you have an overload of information, overload of ideas, overload of thoughts, everybody was just talking, everybody proposing different things. It is right now. There are people who are on Twitter who are proposing that we run something called United States of Nigeria. Different thoughts. Oh, divide the country. Oh, make this place this place. So what I'm trying to say is, when this whole idea of, maybe democracy is not right for Nigeria, for Africa, and democracy is not, it became a very, very popular narrative in Nigeria, after the elections, and even across, some other African countries. But the question I've asked is, what other system is the I've done my little research. Which other system are we proposing? Because democracy is the only thing that gives power to the people. Is there any other system that can work? I even came up with a funny idea that, and I don't think it has been tried anywhere in the world. I don't even think it can work, whereby when you vote for someone, you only suffer the consequences of voting for that person. You if you vote for a particular candidate, only you should suffer the economic conditions that person puts you through, while other people can benefit from or suffer also the consequences of their own decision after an election. Because I think it's pretty unfair
It,
for some people to
yeah, Timmy.
decide, you know.
Yeah, 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 Timmy. I respectfully disagree, and I'll give you a very short story. Uh, Democracy means majority is right, but there's also a saying that if majority being right doesn't mean, how do I want to phrase this? Being a right majority doesn't mean there is the right direction. And I'll give you an example. I'm fortunate to be a president of the Nigerian Association in my Canadian city, and we had a problem in our community. I just became president, and the community does this bureau de exchange on the community platform. The association is a non-profit organization, and bureau de exchange is not part of our scope. Immediately I saw that, I wanted to change it. I said, this is wrong. We're not allowed to be doing bureau de exchange on our platform. And the reason why I was even scared is, if somebody gets defrauded, They will come after me. The police will come after me that why are you running a Bureau de Exchange on a non-profit organization? All the house, everybody in the Nigerian community say, yes, we want it. Don't cancel it. Leave it. Do you know I had to veto it? I vetoed it. I said, look, even within my executives, people within my executive said no, that I should allow Bureau de Exchange to go. Former executive said allow it. They are the owners of their money. Let them be selling money, buying money. And I said I'm going to veto this. I'm not going to allow it. I went for a naming ceremony the following weekend when I canceled everything, and they were calling me Idiagbon. They say, Idiagbon president, by fire, by force. Hey, I was just laughing. I said, I'm doing it in the interest of you because I don't want you to be defrauded. If you are defrauded on this platform, what are you going to do? You're going to come and meet me. I'm the one. Guess what happened a month after? 20 million naira worth of dollars, because most of the people on the platform, most of them are students. They got defrauded on another platform, another Nigerian platform. It happened overnight. They called me up. They said I should intervene and try to help these individuals. One of them wanted to commit suicide because that was his school fees. And the point of that story is majority wanted to continue it, but I had to veto it because I looked at it and said, look, this is not right. I consulted a lawyer. The lawyer said it's wrong, but the majority said, let's continue it. So the point is democracy I think democracy for Africa, for African countries, we can blend something else. We can come up with something else. We call it whatever, right? That's better for Africa. That's designed for Africa.
Yeah, thank you.
I
Since I
yield the
asked
mic.
that question, I wanted to just say something, right? When we're talking democracy, do you think people of Qatar or Kuwait would say we want democracy? So I think this is where we have to be philosophical because I was very intentional in asking that question, you know, due to the fact that we had Burkina Faso, Mali, and then it looked like military was the way forward. So I was like, maybe this is going to bring a counter effect to that perspective, to people's minds. And that's why I asked it. And for democracy, I think once we start dealing with it from the perspective of, oh, maybe let's think about this as a more not just a thing in a system that we think is already, should I say, functioning in quote, but like what people, the majority would want. So I just wanted to say that
Yeah,
before we go to
yeah,
our
and
question
that's
and
kind of
bring it to.
interesting,
Mhm.
Halisa, right? Because as you were talking, I was just thinking about, because Mr. Saida said a lot of things, which I like, him to, because I asked the question that to Mr. Saida, what actual modification when we say, oh, because my argument has always been democracy is perfect. Yeah.
And yeah, to that your point, that modification thing, I'm not a fan.
Okay.
Like, when people say mixed economy, I think I mean, I'm not like saying I'm not a fan of hearing perspective. Of course I want to hear everybody's perspective. I'm saying, like, just my own personal opinion is what actually is the problem. There are scientific ways to go about things, but we like to think about politics from a perspective of, you know I don't know, like a very unintellectual thing, right? Because I was even reading about, should I say, socialism, or Marxism, and people will tell you, oh no, that happened in some century, in like long time ago, right? But when you say scientific, it's like you have to apply it to your time and the place. So you just apply it based on your own culture at that particular time. Nobody is saying you should go and practice what is being practiced in West Europe, right? So I think when it comes to these people, we like to sometimes, and that's what they used to play on our minds, in Nigeria. They'll tell us we're practicing a mixed economy. What is mixed economy? That does not exist anywhere. Like, you're practicing this or you're not, like, for for me, right? So I think it's pretty straightforward sometimes when we're like, oh, we're African people, let's add some spice to these things. I think i think democracy is pretty straightforward. The material condition of people
Yeah.
is pretty
So
straightforward.
Alisa,
So this
uh,
is my own personal
so
perspective, obviously,
Alisa,
right?
well,
So that's
well
just what I
said.
wanted to say. But
But
obviously,
while
you
you were
continue.
while you were
You
away,
were talking.
I
Yeah.
was just saying
Yeah.
personally,
Let me
I
sideboard.
feel
Yeah.
African countries needs an hybrid. Democracy seems to be too soft, and it leaves a lot of ambiguities and gaps for corruption to thrive. I was listening to the radio on my way to work the other day, and one young chap said, "Hey, corruption in Nigeria is escalating. Is escalating. The corruption in 1999, if you compare it to the corruption in 2024, it's the gap is
But
wide."
do you think there's no consensus of the people that corruption is widening? I think majority think that corruption is problematic. Like, except if they, of course, they want to explain it away.
Yeah,
So I think if you want to talk about
so the point I'm
majority of
trying to
people,
make
what they
is,
think about
if
that
we
is
have
pretty
an
straightforward.
hybrid
But
kind
because
of
the institutions
system
are
of
not
government,
solid enough
that the
to take care
military
of it, then
arm,
people might explain
we
it
have a
away.
military
But
president
go ahead.
that controls the judiciary, the Nigerian police force, the ICPC, the EFCC, all the security apparatus, and they manage the corruption. They have a special court for corruption, and his technology is being leveraged on. When the democratic side of it, the prime minister, we have prime ministers in the six geopolitical zones, reduce power from the center, give power to the local government. Let's have House of Parliament, make leadership, politics, not how do I? It's not. It's not driven by money. If you understand what I mean, right? All of a sudden, a guy that doesn't have, he's been running for office since all these days. He becomes a senator. He don't blow. Turn it around in such a way that it's only the people of integrity that truly wants to serve the people would come out. Because when you get to parliament, it's only when you sit at the parliament and you legislate laws that you get paid. You have your other job. And that's how it was in the olden days. You have your other regular job. You're either a teacher, you're either a farmer, you're either a IT consultant. You run for office, you win. When you sit, that's when you get paid. Right? Decentralize everything so that politics is not a money making venture. It's not a do or die affair. That's my own point, right? But in order to change that, we need a crop of leaders, a crop of politicians that will get to the Senate, that will get to the House of Representatives, that will drive a law to change something that would not be in their own interest. Unfortunately, we have some of them out there. They are just very few. I was in Europe about 4 weeks ago. Unfortunately, I met a senator, and the senator was saying he's the only one pushing in the Senate that why should there be Senate? What's the essence of Senate? It's just too expensive. We have people cannot barely eat for 3 square meal. You have a senator making almost 600 million every month. So I think something has to give in order for us to progress in a way that every Nigerian will feel that, hey, this country is moving in the right direction. I yield the mic.
Yes, thank you. And you made a good point there, right? And I do take your point. I just think that sometimes, like, we can apply, these things scientifically without even, but yeah, I do take your point. And I want us to actually speak to another point, because that's interesting that you met someone who is a senator and the person is advocating for the Senate to be scrapped. So after campaigning and using about 1 billion naira, or let's say 800 million naira to campaign, and you go in there and you submit a bill that your position should be scrapped, you know, it's it's interesting. It's definitely interesting, because I mean, the system, some people would argue that it's working functionally for the people that it's supposed to work for. I would not go to the Senate. And I mean, people that are going to the Senate right now, they can't go there, and it's like 100 million is not, it's like not money to them. And then, they are getting 100 million naira car, and they will not look at it like it's a big deal. And that's why they'll come out and speak the way they do speak. So yeah, and that's, since I'm already talking on money, I think it's interest. I mean, it's this is the right time to talk about, the barrier it is for young people to actually get into these offices, because to get into a position, there's no really independent candidacy right now in Nigeria. So you have to go through a political party, and we have a lot of political parties that bill you. You have to get a form. it's like millions of naira to actually be a candidate, not even to win your election, then coupled with the amount of money you have to spend for campaigns and all of those things. So there's just so much barrier, and I would like for us to touch on that. I think Sinosho, please go first for this particular conversation about funding, or should I say, the barriers into what is might be
Yeah,
preventing
I
us.
get. I mean, very interesting conversation we are having. And then I think, can you hear me clearly though? Yeah, but
Yes, yes.
in terms of funding, I think it continues to be one of the Achilles heel for young, resilient aspirants from countries like Nigeria. Uh, I mean, generally. And I think largely funding became a problem because the Nigerian people over the years have continued to grow poverty. Or let me say, they have continued to get poorer by the day. And I'll quickly cite some examples. In time past, we have had instances where political parties have cards like you will have in churches, and the members during meetings contribute towards maintaining the political party. Maybe monthly, some may do annually, some may do even more occasionally, more frequently than that. But people fund their parties, which in the real sense is like people funding their aspiration, people funding the mandates that they are trying to give to any of the aspirants that they are supporting part time. So the conversation now is politics has now degenerated. Why? Because now what we see is that the people in government are stealing so much from the public purse, so they have so much to spend in the terms of election, and considering as well that it's not like they are productive in that role. That means there is just a pool, a very tiny pool of resources to actually steal from. So when they are done stealing, there is not so much to use in the form of um, developmental projects for the people. So in the real sense, what I'm saying is now they will now use that poverty as a tool by returning what they steal, maybe halfway, maybe quarter way, 1/4 back to the people, and then getting them to vote for them. So you that wants to run things the right way, when you go into that space, when you go into that economy, when you go into that country with the hope of saying, "Oh, yo, people, I want to work for you, fund me." What you get is that not so much people or persons there are able to support you. So, in the real sense, like you are trying to ask, money is a problem, and that is owing to the fact that the pool has not been getting larger. Meanwhile, the pocket of the people who have been occupying offices has been getting bigger. So generally, something will give, and what gives is poverty in this case. And then they come back, and then they use those poverty as a tool, give people some peanuts, and to get them to consent to their continued stealing from the public purse. So generally, funding is a big problem, and until we get to a place where people can back their conviction, but with their resources, we might not make any progress really. So I will rest that way.
Yeah, yeah, I take your point, and I also am actually curious if it should be this expensive to run for office. Um, so like, because I think it's almost a given that it has to be funded, almost seriously funded. I
I
mean,
think it
if
goes
other,
without saying
yeah,
as well that in Senegal, right, there is funding for parties as National Assembly recognizes, and at the provincial level by the provincial legislators. So in the real sense, you will be funded. It's similar to the German case that I read one time, where you'll be funded based on how you did in the past election. And don't forget that the party that these guys ran on, I think it's past step now, if I'm not mistaken, uh, they use past step support, in, one other support. But generally, this party will get allocation from directly from the federal purse. So we do not have such instance in Nigeria practically, right? So if perhaps we could also get those, then it would mean that to some extent your campaign budget is being funded by the state that you are running to govern. So that way it doesn't leave you exposed, or let me say susceptible, to whatsoever big bags will do. Like for instance, if somebody who is a big corporate owner decides to give you money, whatever policy you make when you get to offices, you could really make policies that would affect them even when their activity is undermining the interest of the public. So generally what I'm
True.
saying in essence is the state fund people, and also party leaders contribute, and then private donation. But for parties like their own, private donation
Hmm.
actually took center stage. I will
But I just if I'm to button here, is that fine?
Yes, yes, yes. Go ahead,
So
please.
this actually lends credence to what I said earlier on about strengthening our institutions and making sure that the laws regulating the political space are very much ironclad in terms of not only the implementation but also in some way of prevention, so that the law is not there just to deal with you when you run foul of it, but it's also there to guide you. Sinus spoke about money bags, but here we in Nigeria we have an electoral act that was passed in 2022 and that increased the limits for which candidates can spend in the election, and specifically section 88 subsection 2 to 7, if I'm correct, limits the spendings, limits expenses for various elections. So it's the maximum for the presidential election is 5 billion, the 1 billion for the governorship candidates, I think that's in section 88 3, and the senatorial candidates 100 million, and House of Reps 70 million. I think that is contained in section 88 4 down to 6, and I think uh, a sort of improvement from the previous electoral act, which pegged it at 1 billion and the governorship candidates at 200 billion. Now, the problem is not even the amount. The problem is that we know that
You
200
mean
million,
200
yes, for
million?
candidates. So the
Okay.
problem is not even the amount. The problem, what my argument is now, is not the amount. I'll get to it. Is the fact that even in terms of compliance to this, in terms of requesting for all the spending and accounts of all political parties. The question is, has INEC done that? Has INEC been able to fine political parties or their candidates for overspending in certain elections where they have overshot the limit, constitutionally given limits? At the same time, can Nigerians be optimistic about the future where, and you were speaking about independent candidates. So let's take Timmy for example, or myself, or Mr. Saheed. Can we comfortably come out to say, look, we want to run for a governorship election? Where do you want me to get 1 billion naira? Where do you want someone who wants to run for a senatorial seat? These are supposed to be seats or house reps that are close to the populace or close to the grassroots, as they like to say. Where do we get that money? So that delves into what Sinosha says, that there is no doubt that at some point you're going to run to the money bags. And these things are not done out of the blues or out of the winds. They are institutionally generated because we have institutions that are most often than not very stuck off from the reality on ground. And then finally, it also speaks to the volume of how we want our democracy to be, which is a democracy that is available to the highest bidder. Yeah, thank you. So how do we bring the young people? How do we replicate How do we encourage what has happened in Senegal? How do we get young people to move their political consciousness beyond social media? Because I think you said that at some point. It's good ideas, exchange of ideas. How do we get the young people to move beyond social media and actually take part in the political process? Because Pai was not only on social media.
Can I jump in?
He was on the streets. He was in
Yeah,
prison.
yeah, yeah.
He has been
So
a
I
participant
was
in the
fortunate.
political
I
process.
was
How
a
do we get young people?
well,
Because that
I,
should
I
be
was a member
where we
of
should be looking at.
ADC
Yeah, Timmy.
in the last political
Yeah, anybody.
dispensation. The average age of all the candidates that ran under ADC, I believe, was 24. The point is, they had a very, very young demography, and funding was one of the biggest problems that the candidates had. So, your question is very difficult to answer because it's a double edged sword. How do you compete with a senator that have ran in office? He's been in office for like 2 decades. He has a war chest of money, and you have a young, vibrant candidate that has little to no money in the bank, and he's moving towards an electorate that, hey, let's crowdfund, because crowdfunding will be the low hanging fruit to generate money for campaign. And you have the electorate that's so poor, and they look at the senator that's distributing 5,000. Before you know it, you can do the the young guys. They will have a lot of followership, both social media, everything will have a lot of it, but it doesn't translate to getting donations, right? You have a lot of followers. Okay, oh yeah, come on, raise money. Before you know it, they're just raising 10,000, 50,000. Well, the know has 50 million in his account. He is sharing that money. The followers of the young guy would even go to the other place and say, I beg, no vex, so I need to pay my bills. Let me go and get this money. So it's really difficult. And I think the people of Nigeria, the electorate, needs to get to an understanding that the money bags, the people that are bringing money out during campaigns, are actually the enemy of the state. Once that way of thinking flips, then maybe we'll start making some
Yeah,
headway.
I think that what we can, yeah, and that's a great point. And I think that quickly, because we are coming to the end of the podcast already. We've come to the end, but I think that what could be done is that, me personally, I said once I hit a particular age, I will join a political party, and I hit that age and I joined the political party. Right? I think that young people need to join political parties. I think that's very important. Yeah, that's very important because when you're in there, now you have a say. According to the laws of the land and all of those things, once you're a member of a political party, in fact, you start to have, and not just a passive member, not just being a passive supporter, but an active member of the political party. So that is one way. And secondly, I'll say this, and has been my point throughout the beginning of the podcast. Let us not fight against our interest as young people. Let us not talk down on our own interest as young people. It's not our job to be questioning, to be saying, oh, even if you are a youth, blah, blah, blah. Because we have a lot of old people there. Nobody is telling them anything. One young person does something that is wrong, and we use that as an example. But millions and thousands of old people have been doing ridiculous things there. We have Ganduje who took money on camera. Why are we not saying because of that we're not going to vote an old person again? That so I think I was watching one of these Vox Pop videos, and the person was saying a country is supposed to be led by, if you want to talk in the context of democracy, right? You say the majority should have a say. And in Nigeria, the youths are the majority. So we should have a say. It should be a reflection. It should be a reflect. If there are more women in society, there should be more women in the National Assembly. Democracy is meant to be a reflection, a mirror of what the citizens that we have in the country. So now that we have more young people in the country, we should also have more young people taking leadership and not just one person who is an SSA or one person who is a PA. It's time for us to leave all those roles. And if we start putting our agenda in the forefront, I do believe that we will start to have those conversations about, okay, what's stopping the youth? We don't have money. Can we make sure that any political party that claims to want the support of the youth must declare that their tickets are you know, relates to the minimum wage in the country. You understand? We should not be having a minimum wage of 30K and then a political party is saying their form for any position, even the presidential ticket, is 5 million or 20 million. So it needs to be affordable for everyone. So that when that law of the land says once you are 18, you can vote and be voted for, we actually make sure that nobody is caught out of this particular thing. So I think those are the kind of things that we are. We need to use this youthfulness that we have to be it's our power, it's our negotiating block. And this is what I expected us to do after the NSAS, for us to come together as youths and say, okay, this is now the youths of power. So if we're going to support you as a political party, your forms should be affordable. It should have close relation to the minimum wage of the country. It should be this, it should be that, it should be this, it should be that. So those are the kind of things that we can say. And also we can also push bills. That's one important one. We can also push bills where we find a way to equate this thing, so that maybe, because we have a lot of old money in Nigeria, that's one thing that we don't talk about. The money is still in the hands of the elders. The money is still in the hands of the old people in Nigeria. So you can push bill and say, in an election cycle, it should be enforced, that nobody can spend above 50 million for one particular, like in terms of like campaigning or something for a particular position, maybe state governorship or senatorial position or whatsoever it is. So that way it tends to cut down it won't be a game of the highest bidder against the youths that are just struggling. And we youths, we need to support young people. I think that's another thing. We need to support younger people. There needs to be a generational
Yeah,
shift.
I hear your point, and you've made great points there. It's interesting anyways for me, because I am asking this question, but I don't think anyone responded to it or anyone heard what I was saying, because I'm trying to say that, does election have to be that expensive? But I think everybody has already bought into, yes, election is actually expensive. And for me, I do not think that election should be this expensive. There should be no party, no political party that is allowed to sell their form 25 million, 100 million. It should not be allowed. All political parties by law, in fact, I don't know, I know there can be lobbying, there can be ways to go about this. At the end of the day, that's why maybe my second point is going to touch on that, which is which has to do with the system in general, right? We should not be having that. But I think everybody, we are so settled into the fact that it's expensive. I think we've bought into that narrative completely. And then the second one is, as long as you're a, and this is me speaking to my solution, so to say, as long as you're a registered media house in Nigeria, you are supposed to be to allocate a certain type of time to all political parties, even radio houses, radio stations, and outside of that, in fact, they should not be able to buy into it. Like, the state has to be able to do all of these things, because we like to deceive ourselves on making government smaller, 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 which is like just a fallacy, in my opinion. So there are ways that all of these things, you don't need to go and buy slots in media houses, you don't need to buy advertisement slots. As long as you're registered, you're regulated by the state as a media company, because all media houses are, then during election there should be some bill or something that would say, even advertisement, it should not be you buying 1 minute spot. It should just be something that the state has to run. I mean, that's how I see it at this very point. We need government that is that functional, and that's what's going to take me to my other point, which is, my point is, young people or human beings in Nigeria have to be very radical. I don't think there's a way out of this anymore. Like, you politically, like, they need to be very, very radical. Like, I see us as a captured people in such a way that people do not even allow themselves, their minds, to just wander. Like, it's like almost like a taboo to use your mind to think, ah, everybody can exist in Nigeria and just don't not working, no labor slave, no wage slavery. People cannot fathom it. Then everybody want to argue with whoever says that. Just in your mind, nobody's saying you should go to work tomorrow and slap your CEO, right? People are just saying, just use your mind. But people are, we're such a captured people that people are not able to just fathom, just think about how things can be better. So I think maybe you liberate yourself in your smaller circles, like in your mind, just be like radically, like, think about how the most radical type of change that you think you want to see. And once you're able to think about it, when you see the opportunity for organizing to get that, I think you can get it. So I think we have Yeah, many people want to say, yo, you're idealistic now, but yeah, I'm realistic. Go on the road and see how people hawk pure water in a hold up, and tell me that those people are not, that's not radically surviving, right? But yeah, anyways, that's a great way for us to round up. So yes, thank you for joining us today, and yeah, we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you.
You're listening to the Out of the Box podcast with Timmy, Halisa, and Sinosure.